Whether you're going to be playing on console or you're just kind of getting a late league start, maybe some stuff got in the way in your life, like maybe you betrayed PoE and you decided to play Lost Ark instead, or maybe literally anything else happened. But you want to know, well, since everybody else already did all the testing for me, what ended up being the meta for 3.17 and what's pretty good to start right now. We're going to go over all of that in this video. But remember, if these videos are helping you out, make sure to give them a like, and if you're enjoying all the content, make sure to subscribe, hit that little notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest content. And without further ado, let's get into the video. Truth be told, the meta is pretty much exactly what we were expecting. Although, I will say that skeleton mages got a lot more popular than I expected it to, at the very least. Even though most people were like really dead set on doing EA ballistas, and then as a pretty large portion as well, skeleton mages got really popular. Now, I didn't personally think that it was going to be more popular than explosive arrow. As you can see, it is 15% summon skeletons, 14% explosive arrow, 8% poisonous concoction, 8% lightning strike, and then seismic trap, and everything else is down below. And when it comes to what build that you should play, it is very apparent that summon skeleton mages got super popular. However, there's one thing that I do want to say about this build. In the first week, the items for this build were insanely expensive. Like, I'm talking Dead Reckoning got up to like 80, 90 C. Fleshcrafter was 30 or 40 C very early on. There was a lot of very expensive items towards the beginning of the league. Those items are starting to come down in price a little bit, but it is still a little tiny bit expensive to be playing skeleton mages as it currently is. However, I did play this build and it has gone extremely well. This is the first time that I've personally league started with skeleton mages, let alone a necromancer and a summoner, and I would say that I'm slightly disappointed in its ability to handle invitations particularly, but when it comes to all of the things that I knew that it was already good at, it has handled them extremely well. Bosses are really simple, like say, for example, the Searing Exarch is really easy with this build. I'll talk more about that when I do like the boss kill guide videos that I'll be doing here soon. Most of the boss is pretty simple, straightforward, pretty good for map clearing. It is pretty solid for things like Ritual, Blight whenever they do happen to work, Simulacrum, all those things that I kind of knew that it was already good for. Turns out it's really good for. Very solid build, it scales extremely well. Pretty straightforward, pretty safe, pretty tanky. Everything is pretty good about Skeleton Mage's Necromancer. However, the pieces of gear are still a little bit expensive. So do keep in mind, if you are going to league start right now or swap over into Skeleton Mage's Necromancer, you're gonna be paying a little bit of money to get some of these top items, and some of the much more expensive items like Breath Stealer is like 4 Exalt right now. Now, next is going to be the Explosive Arrow build. Now, this is both being played as an Elementalist and a Hierophant. On Softcore, it is much more geared towards the Elementalist. If we go to Hardcore Archnemesis, you're going to see more of the Champion as well as the Hierophant. And if you go to SSF Hardcore, you'll see once again Champion and Hierophant. However, most of you here are going to be about Softcore League. So it did end up doing pretty well. The price of Deity and Dawn, it was like 5 or 10 chaos for the first couple of days, which was pretty interesting. The Polaric Devastation Ring is pretty expensive, but of course you don't need it for that. But this build ended up being really solid. As I said previously in most of my videos, this build looked extremely good. It ended up being extremely good. The only downside being some of the weird quirkiness of the build, and this is also really good against Searing Exarch. But I think that the EA Ballistas turned out really solid. If you were looking to play this build and you're comfortable with all the little nuances that you need to do about it, nothing that this build is using is insanely expensive, except for the very high-end stuff like the ring, as well as, of course, things like Ashes of the Stars are a little expensive and things like that. Now, going down beyond that, we do have Occultist, which is going to be mainly Poisonous Concoction as well as Cold Dot. Poisonous Concoction did okay, but I have gotten some feedback from some people that they're kind of upset with the fact that it doesn't scale very well in the endgame, which is kind of what I was saying all along, is that this is a very good mapping build. The Occultist is much better for mapping than the Pathfinder, but the Pathfinder has a little bit easier time on bosses. It really genuinely just doesn't really scale super well, so if you are wanting something to farm those new bosses and such, I would probably skip on the Poisonous Concoction build. If you're just looking for something to blast some maps, it's a pretty damn solid build. Now, going beyond this, we have the Saboteur. Fizz Traps, still as good as I said that it was. Fizz Traps ended up being insanely powerful again. pretty much everybody that is doing like carries for bosses and all of the people who are getting really, really successful like outcomes with the new invitations and such, they're pretty much all playing Fizz Traps. As I said, Fizz Traps is going to be an amazing bosser this league once again. The nerfs were exactly like I said. I know there were a bunch of people who are like, we gotta wait for Fizz Traps, we don't know if it's going to be good, and I don't really understand what those people were seeing. It makes me think that those people didn't play Fizz Traps and they were just saying something so that they could have an opinion on it instead of actually being someone informed. Because as I said previously, pretty much everybody who actually played Fizz Traps was like, yeah, it doesn't look like it's going to be nerfed at all. Everybody's still playing it for a bosser. If you're looking for a build that is super, super powerful for doing all the new invitations, for killing all of the new bosses, you want something that's really, really solid, Fizz Traps is still an absolutely excellent build. Now, going beyond this, we do have the Spectral Helix builds. Spectral Helix didn't get as popular, at least in softcore, as some of the other things that got a little bit more popular than that. That being said, I've heard mostly good things about Spectral Helix. There's nothing wrong with the build or anything, but not as many people were playing it as maybe I had thought. It is kind of a weird ability, and I did kind of expect some people to quit it afterwards, but it really is a much smaller percentage of the people that are playing, at least in softcore. Build is still good, but it has issues scaling up into the much, much higher levels of content. Especially the Assassin has a little bit of difficulty scaling. Deadeye can probably scale a little bit easier, but Spectral Helix is still okay. I haven't heard people saying that it's terrible, but that is pretty much the situation with Spectral Helix. And then beyond that, there haven't really been any breakout builds. Lightning Strike is still good, but I would suggest only more experienced players play this, and there's still the Corrupting Fever, like the Gladiator. There was some people that were trying to play like Spark and Cyclone and all of this, but I'm not really recommending those at this time. There are also some weird like minor builds that were pretty good. But I would definitely say, as a kind of a TLDW or whatever you want to call it, the Summon Skeleton Mages is really, really solid for most content, except for invitations. It's not great for invitations without pretty heavy investment. EA Ballista's pretty solid build overall. Poisonous Concoction really kind of is falling off when it comes to the new bosses and such. I wouldn't really recommend it for bossing. If you're just looking for some map blasting, then by all means. The Fizz Trap Saboteur, as I said, the premier boss killer this league is still really, really, really solid for boss killing. Spectral Helix is okay, and then everything else below that didn't really seem to be as popular as the rest of those. And that is going to be it for the video. So remember, if you're wanting to play the Skeleton Mage's Necromancer or you're interested in the Fizz Trapper, I do have guides for both of those. They're on my channel. You can go check those out. I am keeping the Pvs up to date, but there isn't really very much to update with them at this time. As I get more information, I'll do those updates and such to them. But remember, boys, if you're enjoying the content, make sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit that little notification bell, and remember, stay safe out there in raid class. And I'll see you guys in the next video.